What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 95 of Destination the Show. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined after a lengthy break by Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, this has definitely been the longest. We're gonna sound like two people dating. This is the longest I've gone without talking to you for maybe ever. How's it going, man? It's been a minute.
Yeah, I mean it's been a while, and the last one recorded I don't think was a regular Wednesday night either. So I mean it's been like a month since we've done this. It's life's good. Life happens fast. So every once in a while taking a Wednesday night off isn't an awful deal. So we're all good over here. How are you doing over there?
Doing well. So we should probably, before we get into all the things, address where on earth we've been, because I feel like we have been on a really good flow over the summer, through the draft, through the trade deadline, all that good stuff, and then suddenly we've been nowhere for the past 2 weeks. So we had kind of long intended to take a week off at some point after the trade deadline, and that turned into a little bit more of an extended break than we anticipated, because one random weekend morning, woke up in the morning and my daughter, who's 9, woke up and she just looked terrible, like terrible, like beyond regular, under the weather. Um, and so my wife's always on it with this type of thing. So she took her to urgent care. Urgent care turned into ER, and then the ER turned into several days at Children's Hospital on a
Ooh.
course of IV antibiotics. So she was out of school. We were sleeping nights in the hospital, and she is fine, doing wonderfully, all the way recovered, back to school, gymnastics, and all the things that she likes to do. But, dude, all the cliches about health are so true. I've been kind of reminded of in the past few weeks or so, like the you don't have a problem until your health is a problem, or like it puts everything in perspective. It was a little bit of a scary, definitely weird, definitely extremely routine throwing off week or so. Um, so that's why we've been off air a little longer than anticipated. And I would finish. Sorry for hogging the mic here, real quick, as we get back up and running. I would finish by just shout out to um, healthcare workers, man. We're
Yeah.
lucky enough not to have needed them a ton, but they took the nursing team especially took such great, amazing care of her. So I'm super grateful and happy to be chopping it back up with you, talking our hopefully regular nonsense on Wednesdays through
So we
what is
do, right?
almost the off season. Yeah,
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 we're full we're full of nonsense. Yeah, so I mean that I was trying to keep in touch with you enough, but also not bother you during that time. So it's like, hey, things good? You know how dudes do it. It's like we don't need a lot of words.
Hey,
Uh,
bro.
but yeah, I mean, whenever there's things with kids, it's scary, and you never really know, right? I mean, what is a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old? My daughter, I think, when she had an emergency appendix removal, was 2020, so she was like maybe 13, 14 years old,
Yep.
and you don't know because it's like you're asking questions and they're trying to answer questions as best they can, but they don't know either. So yeah, I mean, when in doubt, you take them to people that have a much better clue, and then you just cross your fingers and hope. But that's probably the hardest part of parenting, right? When your kids are going through stuff and you just can't fix it.
hundred
And
percent, man.
yeah, so
100%.
anyway,
Anyway, about the baseball. So excited to dig back in. And honestly, man, I mean, it's been good. We've been full on through the summer, so it was good to get a break and a reset and all the things. And we are hoping to be back to pretty much regularly scheduled programming from here. So we'll quickly knock out the housekeeping, and then we got 2 topics that we're going to dive into today, and we'll be back in the flow. So, ways that you can support the show: you can like and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. If you want to look at our ugly faces, you can do so on YouTube. The handle there is at Destination the Show. If you want to send us a question or a comment or an insult, even, um, you can do so on Twitter at DTS_pod1, on Blue Sky at Destination the Show, or you can send us a question the old-fashioned way, destinationtheshow@gmail.com. We definitely have some questions, which we're going to kind of resurface here. We probably won't get to those tonight as we kind of get back in the flow here, but appreciate you guys interacting and supporting the show wherever you can. Jeremy, let's talk about draft lottery odds. So here's my opening question for you. With what level of frequency, maybe it's less now because the school year is up and running, so I know you're much more busy than you would be during the summer. With what level of frequency are you checking tankathon odds and where the Twins are sitting in the lottery?
So I haven't checked. I mean, it's been a handful of days as I'm trying to get this to load right now. I actually, that's where I get like my scores and my just to try to keep up with things. So it's nice because you kind of have all of the sports in one spot at real time. So I don't think I've looked since there kind of became that gap. I think they were third by a couple of games.
Yep.
And so I'm not exactly sure where they're at now, but yeah, Tankathon's a great website, and so I'll let you kind of take it from here.
Yeah, so this seems like a logical jumping off point to dig into a little bit of an overview of the draft lottery odds of where the Twins are. And what we really wanted to do here is not just break down and start to preview the lottery, because like it or not, that is going to be a big part of what we have to look forward to in all likelihood over the off season. And so if you're listening to this, you're probably a draft fan, but if you're not, you're going to be, because the Twins are definitely going to have a high pick. You're stuck with a high pick. So there's a couple of things I think we should cover here. Right now, they are tied with Pittsburgh for the second best odds at claiming the number one overall pick. My tankathon is not loading either, so I hope that's not a bad omen. But they're tied second place with Pittsburgh. Whether they finish with the second or third worst odds does actually matter quite a bit. It's going to change their chances of getting the number one overall pick by about 6 percentage points. So that's like a decent hefty swing. And a couple of other things that I think are relevant that we should cover, right? There are 3 teams that are ineligible to draft inside the top 10 picks. That's giving the Twins a decent boost this year because both the Nationals and the Rockies have worse records than the Twins. And that's also impacting the odds quite a bit. So if anyone, and I know your angle, Jeremy, is always the NBA. If anyone's an NBA fan, you'll know that the bottom 3 teams by record in the NBA, I believe, are given equal odds at the number one pick. Is that still the case in the NBA, Jeremy, or am I making stuff up?
Well, I believe they just kind of they flattened out those odds.
Okay.
To take some of the ping pong balls from the worst team and give them to the third team to kind of flatten. So it's like it's not a race to be the very worst. It's like if you're in the bottom 3, it's equal.
Okay, so so in baseball, the worst 3 records are actually given equal odds or equal probability of getting the number one pick because two of the teams that have the 3 worst records are ineligible. Their percentages are kind of staggered and redistributed throughout the rest of the teams. So you've got the White Sox with the best odds. They're at about 27.7% at the moment. The Pirates are currently in second place, even though they have an equal record with the Twins, 22.2%. And then the Twins coming in third at 16.8%. There's a pretty hefty gap at this point. We're talking about a 6-game gap between the Twins in third and the Athletics in fourth. So they're pretty much locked into the top 3. What do you make of that, Jeremy? What's the upshot of having a top 3 pick as we start to transition to think about kind of picks and bonus pools and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean that the odds is that's what you want if you're this bad. But it's all about the money. As I hit Sim Lottery one time and the Twins dropped to 7th, that actually just happened. But it's all about the leverage that you get with the position, but
Yep.
the money that's attached to it. And so when you make that big jump up, it's just you're afforded this luxury to do kind of whatever you want in the draft.
Yep.
And the Twins are going to have way more flexibility. Whatever the team is going to have way more flexibility, at 1, at 2, at 3, at 4, and even down to 7, because there's just more money attached to it. But you kind of lose some of that ability to do things when your entire pool is not as great as the teams around you. So you're going to have the free agent compensation picks. You're going to have the competitive balance picks, right? You're going to have potentially PPI, although I don't think there's going to be any of that happens this year.
Nick Kurtz is going to get a PPI pick for. Actually, maybe he wasn't up in time though.
He wasn't. No.
Okay.
So that's kind of where it's at. Like there's so many benefits to being in that position, and the sad thing is if you're a Rockies fan and you have 43 wins right now,
It's so sad, dude.
You can't pick till 10th. So and then finishing in the bottom 3 assures you that if the worst case scenario is if the Twins have the third worst odds or the third best odds, if 1, 2, and 3 all drop down, they wouldn't drop past those teams, right? So
Right.
so like in this one simulation that I did, the Giants actually dropped from 8 to 13 because they dropped around those 3 teams. So there's a lot that goes into it. At this point, it's early enough in the draft cycle that you're not like, oh, it's not going to be one of the big 3, because that ebbs and it flows as the season goes on. But you're certainly, I mean, at this point, you're hoping that you just end up 1 game worse than the Pirates.
Yep.
And reap the benefits of that. And I'm assuming the tiebreaker is still like the previous year.
That's a great question, and I definitely should have checked that before we came on. I do want to pick up on something that you said, right, which is essentially answering this question: what happens if the Twins drop? Because there is a finite range now that they can pick in realistically, and I'm 99.9% confident about this at this point. So if the Twins drop to outside of a lottery spot, and we should remind folks that only the top 6 picks are decided by the lottery. Okay. Right. So if the Twins drop outside those top 6 picks, they would automatically assume the next pick after that. So if they drop to outside the top 6, they would pick 7th.
Well, not necessarily.
Unless
unless
some combination of Chicago and Pittsburgh also drop outside the lottery. So really the range of outcomes we're looking at is an absolute worst case scenario. The Twins would pick 9th. Mm-hmm. And they can pick in any spot between 1 and 9, but in all likelihood, we're looking at a top 3 pick. Like that is the most likely outcome given where things are heading into the last week of the season.
Yeah. With the disclaimer that it's not significantly larger, and teams have dropped every year.
Every year. Yep.
So
in some cases, multiple teams. So why does this all matter? Let's talk about the math a little bit. And you made a comment of like it's all about the money. So we should talk about the money and dig into that. And then I also want to talk about one other reason why it really, really matters. Hashtag rock bottom is the popular refrain of teams in our neck of the woods at the moment. So I did some math, Jeremy, just pulling slot values from last year. So from the 2025 or this year, excuse me. So from the 2025 draft. Now, word to the wise, these always increase year over year. Between 24 and 25.
I just want to interrupt with the scoreboard break. The Pirates just beat the Reds 4-3. So take that into account for your tankathon, or if you're rooting for the Reds to get in, that's not so great.
Pirates beat the Reds, so the Twins are currently second for at least a couple of innings. If Texas can hold on, they'll be standing alone in second. So These slots always go up every year, somewhere between like 4, 5 to 9% usually. So I'm just going to give the rote numbers from last year just for ease of access for everybody. And I'm giving approximate figures. The first pick slot value last year was around 11 million. Pick 2, 10.2. Pick 3, 9.5. So you're looking at a difference of like $800,000 between pick 1 and 2 and $700,000 between pick 2 and pick 3. By contrast, if the Twins fall and they fall outside the lottery to pick 7 this year was worth $7.1 million. So if we just take where they are right now, the difference between 7.1 and 10.2, they would lose 3.1 million from their bonus pool by dropping from pick 2 to pick 7. I mean, that's pretty much an unmitigated disaster on top of this season if that was to happen, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean that, but that's the good part about the lottery, right? It's that you're not guaranteed. And I mean, we've come so far. Like the year that the Twins drafted Mauer first, they used to rotate the years. So it was a major American League team would get the first pick.
That's crazy.
The next year, the National League team would get it, and they would go back and forth for a certain range. Because I think the Cubs' record was worse than the Twins that year, but because it was the American League year, and so we've come a long ways. But the reality is like the Twins made their decision at the end of July that they were not going to be competitive anymore. And as a result, they fell to the point where they will have potentially, the second highest, but really, really good odds to have the ability to spend more money, which is something, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's a huge, huge deal if they were to drop to 7, because that you're essentially losing what equates to a late first round pick or a top 20 pick.
Yep.
But if you think about any draft, right, what's the cost of moving up from 7 to 1? If you think about the football draft, you're giving up a first round pick. So
yep.
it makes sense logically. It's just, it's such a weird dynamic because it's like they all have values, but that value doesn't really matter because it all goes into the pool. And what these guys are going to get as the first pick or the second pick is going to be very close to what the first and second pick got last year. You're just going to have that much more money to play with, whether that's with your second pick or your third pick or your first pick on the second day or your picks later. There's so much strategy involved, and it gives you that much more flexibility to get the guys that you want or take more risks or however you want to play it.
Yep. So what does this amount to in terms of bottom line? Just quick back of the napkin math. No one, please don't commit this to memory, because invariably I'll be off by $500,000 or $1 million here or there. But I tried to kind of project what the Twins bonus pool might look like if they're able to secure a top 3 pick. Now, for context setting here, in this draft, I think you and I would probably agree, Jeremy, that they had a fairly typical bonus pool. And by that, we mean a mid to later first round pick, a comp A pick, nothing extra, no free agent compensation type picks. That's pretty representative of what they'll normally have. This year, they had the 12th largest bonus pool. So just, hovering around the top third, it was 12.6 million. Next year, if they have a top 3 pick, their bonus pool is going to be around 17 million. That would have ranked second or third in 2025. There's always a team that has a combination of a relatively high pick, a comp A pick, and then some type of free agent compensation, like the Brewers in 2025, had like a Willy Adames compensation pick and maybe another one they ended up trading to the Red Sox. But how does the idea of a $17 million bonus pool and a top 3 pick sound ahead of what's shaping up to be a strong 2026 class?
Yeah, I mean, for a farm system that is already pretty high up, you're gonna add a top 30 global prospect, and you're going to add a lot of guys that have the potential to be top 100 prospects within a handful of years. So I mean that's the idea, right? You want to help pump up the teams that aren't as good because you want to make this as competitive as possible. And so that the irony in the Twins trying to trade all these guys and cut payroll and save money, but the result is the potential to have a $17 million bonus pool. Is just it makes me chuckle, because then you wonder, they're the one of the two teams that have never paid an overage. Like,
this would be the year to do it too, because your overage on 17 million would be, what was 7? What's half of 1.7? 850. Sure.
So, but my question is going to be, are we going to be looking at, like, let's fast forward and just say, yep, they have a $17 million bonus pool. Mm-hmm. Are they going to be the first team to be like, well, they had a $17 million bonus pool and they spent $11 million?
Stop.
Sure. What I mean? Like,
why are you bursting my bubble? I haven't seen you for 2 weeks and you're coming up with.
That's what I do.
We haven't hung out for 2 weeks, and your first thing back on the first episode back is, what if they spend $11 million of their $17 million bonus pool? Get out of here. Oh, my God.
Because you like, what's the over under on trading people? And I'm like, wow, it might be everybody. And you're like, that's never going to happen. They're not trading Correa. I'm like, fair. Well, Jamie, I don't know. I like to be the guy that keeps it real here.
You know what, though? My counterpoint to that would be, even if that was within the realms of possibility, the Pohlads value. Okay, you can't just value not spending anything if you own a baseball team. I feel like they value financial efficiency. The draft is the most efficient way to get baseball talent into your system. Second most after the international signing period, I guess you could argue.
But they didn't trade for any international signing money.
But I also think you could make a point that the draft is even more efficient, because you're trying to scout 13 and 14-year-olds when you're making these handshake deals in the Dominican and Venezuela, and
it's much better. Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, man, that would be so sad, and I sure don't see it happening. But I also don't see them budging on that policy of spending into their overage, which is really a shame, because honestly, even with the tax, the Twins just lost. They're in second place standing alone now. Even with the tax of 100% of the overage that they would pay, it's still worth it. It's still worth it to secure another prep talent that you couldn't normally acquire.
Right. I mean, and you're talking 850,000. Like, that's late. What are we talking? Third round.
Yeah.
I mean, it's top 100 money. Yep. Like, you could get a top 100 pick just by spending that, and obviously you're paying tax on that. But yeah, I'm at the point now where whatever happens is not going to surprise me. So I'm going to come up with crazy scenarios and say, yeah, that's a possibility.
And I'm going to yell at you for them, and then sometimes you're going to be right, and that's going to be bad.
Really bother you. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We will be giving pretty regular draft lottery updates. Before we move on, just the last 2 cents I wanted to give on this, now that I've remembered how to speak. The other reason this matters is there is a consensus number 1 prospect in this draft. Mm-hmm. We talked about this in 2023, and that was a consensus top 5, which I think is highly unusual. That notion that, like, hey, any of these guys could go number 1. That has really, honestly, like, that has held up so well, with the exception of Dylan Cruz. Langford, Max Clark is raking, Jenkins is in AAA, and Paul Skeens is the best pitcher on the planet. There's a consensus top prospect in this draft, Rock Chalowski, shortstop for UCLA. I mean, just to give folks an idea, Baseball America, via friend of the show, Carlos Collazo, published an article today saying, scouting Rock Chalowski, the best shortstop prospect in 10 years. So now, obviously, that's one article, that's one opinion, but there is no real weaknesses in the game here. We're talking about hit, power, defense, decent speed, leadership, It's like really the whole package and the real deal. And unfortunately, the most likely alternative is that he ends up on the Chicago White Sox, who are starting to amass a decent farm system of their own. So that's another reason that it matters in addition to the money. So we'll dig more into the guys later.
I think there's so many. Obviously, when you have a player such as him, he's going to check all the boxes anyway. But when you think of like what the Twins have traditionally done and where they've taken these guys from, like his profile is very similar to Royce Lewis's, right? I mean, obviously a college guy who's already been like named the college player of the year as a freshman. He's the qualities that he has, where he's from, like these are all. I mean, if it's anybody, whoever gets the first pick, like that's the odds-on favorite, and it's
100% agree.
But if the Twins first pick, I would say it's even more likely, right? I mean, he is such a Twins type player.
Yeah, he is,
and is probably. I mean, and this is really forecasting because he's younger. I mean, you're talking about a guy that will play. I mean, there will be a very strong chance that he is a Major League Baseball player within 10 months of being drafted, right? So, and probably the moment that he's drafted, no matter what team. I mean, there maybe is a few exceptions where he's not the number one prospect, but you're talking about a dude that's going to be for sure a top 5 prospect. If he even plays a little, I mean, he could take a step back from last year.
You're talking about globally or for the org he's drafted into? Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is like, I wonder, and I suppose it depends how things go between now and then with graduations and guys improving and all those things. But I think we've talked about this a bit like loosely before, how there's been like, it feels like a little bit of like erosion, Jeremy, in terms of like the high caliber talent at the top of top 100s. Like, remember when it was like Julio Rodriguez, Ellie De La Cruz, and who's the Orioles catcher who's always hurt? Adley Rutschman. Those were like the top 3 guys. And there was like all these fun debates about like, whoa, these are like legit like 65 type prospects. I wonder how compelling of an argument you could make that if Rock Chalowski has a similar caliber season in 2026 to 2025, he enters even top 3 or top 1 on top 100 lists.
Yep. I mean, there's an argument to be made there. Connor Griffin's probably one on most boards right now.
I would say Connor Griffin or Kevin McGonigal are the 2 guys at the moment. McGonigal, the Tigers' second pick in 2023 after Max Clark. That's shaping up to be a doozy. Unbelievable draft. Yeah. Okay. We will continue to talk about draft lottery odds. Twins stand alone in second place now. Let's hope that continues for the remainder of the season. But we also wanted to talk a little bit about the Arizona Fall League, Jeremy, because I remember sitting down with you this time last year and having a conversation about the Twins roster. And I think at that time we probably did Twins and Cubs and Brewers all together. And we probably spent 3.5 minutes talking about the Twins roster.
Which was 3 minutes and 15 seconds too long. It was awful. It was an awful roster. It was the worst collection of. It was
boring.
Yes.
It was really boring, right? This year, however, I think we're both in agreement that this is a much more exciting crop. So what I figure we'd do is just kind of outline the roster, starting with pitchers, and then we'll go infielders, and then we'll go any relevant outfielders, and just talk through some of the guys through the scope of their 2025 season. Like, why are the Twins sending them? What are they there for? Because there are kind of different reasons and different purposes, but maybe you can just give us a quick 30 seconds on like, what is the AFL? Why did teams find it useful? What do they use it for? That type of thing. And then we'll jump into some names.
Yeah. So there's a few reasons that guys get sent there. The big reason, or the most exciting reason, is when teams kind of use it as the finishing school for their decent prospects. More often than not, that's hitter type players. You see some catchers getting called up there. Traditionally, it's used for domestic players because the foreign-born guys can go play winter ball, and so I mean American-born guys can too, but you don't see that as often, and teams are limited to how many foreign-born players that they can bring into the Arizona Fall League. So a finishing school is kind of like the reason that you want guys to be there, right?
Yep.
Other than that, a lot of times it's for pitchers. Like we hope that they would get to a certain pitch, a certain limit amount of innings through injury or whatever, or maybe they're coming back from injury and they just want to build it up and see development of pitches. I think there's a lot of reasons that you might see things like that, but traditionally it's the hitters that are more exciting, the pitchers that are, potentially like, do we want to add this guy to the 40 man?
Yeah.
I think now with Rapsodo stuff and all this StatCast, that teams have a pretty good idea. And if they're borderline on a guy, they'd be more likely to not send him, because it's like, we don't want teams to get a real good look at guys that we're thinking about. So I think that focus has kind of shifted here as times progress, because there's just so much information that teams have. And so I think the themes that we'll talk about today will be relatively consistent with what we will see in the future as well.
Okay. Good rundown. Let's talk about some of the guys. We'll deal with the pitchers as a cluster, and then I'm going to plant the seed now, Jeremy, of calling on you and saying like which of the arms are you most intrigued by and why, and then we'll kind of compare and contrast. So Twins are sending 5 pitchers: Miguel Angel Boadas, Jacob Hall, Hunter Hoops, Dylan Questad, and former Tennessee Volunteer National Champion Xander Sechrist, who was a free agent signing after the 2024 draft. Any of these names jump out to you, Jeremy, and pique your interest, and why?
Yeah, well, Dylan Questad is probably the one that does the most. Prep pitcher, drafted 2023 out of Waukesha or Waterford, Wisconsin, so relatively local from the perspective of he's a Midwest guy.
Yep.
5th round, did not really do much. He did pitch a little bit, I want to say, in 23, 24. I don't have those stats in front of me. But this year, through 74 innings, had 83 strikeouts, but put a lot of runners on, gave up a lot of runs. Did it from like the 11 games started, 25 games played. And so I think it's really like just extending his workload a little bit. There's obviously ability there.
For sure.
But the best way to refine it is to have him face live pitching. And so spending the year, I think that he never made it to Cedar Rapids, did he?
Correct. No, he was at Fort Myers the year. The whole year.
So now it's kind of the, let's see what he's got in him. I would assume he'll be at Cedar Rapids, but it might be like, is this a guy that we can still potentially look at as a starter?
Yep.
Or is he, just gonna slot in as a relief pitcher? But I mean, you strike out over 9 an inning, almost 10 per 9. Like,
yeah,
that to me is intriguing. And he's on the smaller side. He's not much over 6 feet tall, kind of a little more bulk to him, but I think he's the highest ceiling of the pitchers that they have. He was born in 2004, so we're talking about a guy that is still 20 years old. So I think there's certainly upside, and the Twins are rewarding him by sending him to the Fall League.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really good rundown, Jeremy. And just to add a couple more numbers to your overview there, and Questad was a decent bonus guy. It was $500,000, 5th round, 2023 draft, where the Twins really went prep heavy. Walker Jenkins, Charlie Soto, took a ton of, I want to say like 5 out of 6. Brandon Winokur was another one. 4 out of their first 6 picks, I believe, in that draft were prep. A 17.7% walk rate this season, and that's an improvement on 2024, right? And so you got to say we need to start seeing an improvement in the strike throw, simply. And he's shown it in flashes. I mean, like, if you look at the numbers, he improved pretty much across the board from the complex league to Fort Myers. And I think sending him there after throwing 75-ish innings as a 20-year-old is a good sign that they feel like he can handle the workload and he's healthy. But these improvements are kind of like relatively speaking. However, as you mentioned, he's absolutely got age on his side. The stuff is good. He throws in the mid-90s. And I think, I can't for sure remember, but I almost guarantee, Jeremy, we said when they took him, like, this is going to be like a super slow burn type of prospect. But he was a really well thought of arm. He was committed to Arkansas, which is a great school for pitching development. So, he's going to be exciting to watch for sure. I have one more from the pitching ranks that I want to talk about quickly because I think he's relevant potentially to the 2026 big league team.
Okay, it's the guy that. So I actually put mine in order of most.
Okay.
Most exciting to least exciting. So
okay. Who's your next?
The only guy that's pitched above. I mean, Hunter Hoops that pitched at Wichita this year.
Yeah. So let's talk about Hunter Hoops real quick. So first of all, let's remind everyone how much the Minnesota Twins love the University of Alabama because that's where Hunter Hoops went. Connor Prelip, Jonathan Stevens, who they took this year. They really have a ton of ties to that school. Hunter Hoops is a really interesting story. He's 25. The Twins signed him out of Tread Athletics, which is like a driveline adjacent type kind of pitching lab where he went viral for throwing 101 and then throwing like 107 mile per hour pull down, like one of those throws where you run up and like crow hop into the wall or whatever. And the Twins signed him directly out of being like a pitching instructor there as a minor league free agent as like a 25-year-old. So that's like weird and fun and interesting in and of itself. He throws incredibly hard. He was assigned as a 25-year-old to Fort Myers. This is all last year. So I just want to kind of outline his progress. 21 innings at Fort Myers, struck out 13.7 per 9. Holy moly. 2.14 ERA, 2.99 FIP. Level passed, I think we can say. Went to Cedar Rapids, threw 17.1 innings, struck out 10.3 per 9 innings, 1.56 ERA, 3.81 FIP, level passed. Then went to AA and kind of get flamed out at the end of the year, which I don't necessarily know is super surprising. That's a big jump. 14 innings, struck out less guys, seemed to develop an issue with strike throwing towards the end of the year. Maybe it was worn down. Who knows? 7.07 ERA, but a 5.02 FIP is much less terrifying. He's a guy I think you could make an argument for. If he stays healthy and goes back to AA and pitches well, like he's a reliever already. That's like locked in. He is a relief pitcher. The Twins have 7 bullpen jobs available, like 6 bullpen jobs available. Like he is a guy who could push his name into the mix. You could see them being aggressive, I think, with a 25-year-old who's repeating AA at the beginning of 2026. And so for that reason, he's kind of the opposite of Questad, where it's like Questad could maybe be a starter, but he's a million miles away. Hoops is definitely a reliever, and he's a little bit closer. And so he was a name I picked out as potentially worth monitoring for 2026. What say you?
Yeah, and the thing with the AFL is I think it's the teams have a lot of say in how this all goes down, right? So
yeah,
if they can, like in my mind, it would be hey, we'd love to send you this guy and see how he looks in the back of the bullpen and high leverage, because he's going to throw hard, and we'd love to see him, and not that, I mean, he had 2 saves all year, but I would think that would be a way to just kind of handle him and say, let's see if he can handle high leverage situations in a different kind of a comfortable but not as comfortable environment, and bring him back, because I think that's kind of what you look for in a closer, right? Is just a flame throwing dude. And if he could do that, not necessarily for the Twins, but if you have kind of a closer in waiting or someone that you'd like to see, I think that makes a ton of sense. And he's got the stuff. It's just a matter of, is he going to be able to kind of develop the other things that he needs, the refinement to really be a high leverage guy. But I think this is exactly what you use the 100%. AFL for.
Yep. 100%. And look, like, I think the other thing I would say is just like, I was talking about this with other folks recently on like social media and whatever. It's been hard to follow the end of the season just because there's not that many interesting stories, like at the major league level. Like what you got, Keishel, Austin Martin, sure. Taj Bradley and Debbie Matthews finishing on a high note. Like we're kind of grasping at straws here. And so I'm also trying to plant seeds for myself of like, ooh, Hunter Hoops, someone to keep an eye on in 2026. That's keeping me interested and excited. Okay, let's move on to the infielders. Did you rank your infielders in terms of most to least interesting by any chance?
Well, there's only two of them, right?
There's only two. Where do you want to start? We got Billy Amick or Brandon Winokur, and I think they're both worthy of kind of like their own discussion.
Yeah, I would say we should start with Winokur because that to me is not as obvious of a choice. Like I think Amick makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
And Winokur, to me, that's like we're kind of taking a jump here.
Yeah.
Right?
This is really interesting. And one of my first questions that I thought of in my head, Jeremy, was like, ask Jeremy why Winokur is in the AFL. So maybe we can actually save that to the end. Why don't we do this? Let's recap his 2025 season, dig into the numbers a little bit. I'm going to ask you kind of what you make of that. And like, if we were playing golf, how do you kind of like grade him for the level? Was it like par? Was he like 1 under, 1 over? Like how would you assess his 2025? And then we'll come back to like, why is he there? So Winokur spent all of 2025 in Cedar Rapids, super young for the level, 20. This was his age 20 season. He hit 226, 304, 388, a 97 WRC plus. So that's like right around an average hitter by WRC plus. 17 home runs, 26 steals. He walked 8.3% of the time, which is exactly identical to his 2024 mark. And he did cut his strikeout rate by about 4%, 28% at Fort Myers in 2024, 24% in 2025 at Cedar Rapids. Played shortstop, played center field. We know he's an incredibly explosive athlete. What do you make of that performance as a 20-year-old at Cedar Rapids?
I was hoping for more. And I think I would start him there next year. And because, I mean, the numbers that I look at, like, you know, I've talked about a lot. Like, I want to see where the strikeout numbers are. 131, that's a ton of strikeouts.
A lot.
44 walks, that's not a ton of walks. And obviously you say, well, you know, those numbers percentage-wise are better. His on base went down from 327 to 304. 304 is awful. Like that's awful. And his slugging dropped from 545 to 434 to 388 despite hitting 17 home runs, but he did it in over 100 more at bats. So to me it's let's give the bat just more opportunities to see pitches. But I'm kind of curious what the plan is offensively, or excuse me, defensively, because I just don't anticipate him going there and playing shortstop like that. That's not logical. So is this hey, he didn't, well, I'm going to pull this up. Like he played 48 games in center, 30 games at third, and 46 games at short. Like, is this he's going to end up at like maybe play some third, maybe play some right field? Like, could this be where he sees some corner outfield spot? I also think, and we'll talk about this with another guy, I'm sure, can Winokur play first base? Right?
Yeah, but like, why would you do that at this point, I guess?
Well, I think to see if he can. Right.
Yep.
I don't think it makes as much sense with him as Mendez, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But like to me, it's like he's gonna have to play somewhere in this league defensively, and shortstop is not the place. So just to get a little more focus at wherever it is he's gonna play he's not going to be a center fielder long term. Like he's just not, right?
I agree with that too.
He'll be a shortstop long term. So like finding that home and giving him all the opportunities to find that home, whether that's right, left, or third, right? Or potentially first. Like those are just what's left. So that's I guess that's kind of my theory. What's your take?
I mean, I agree with most of what you said, right? While you're walking through that, I did look back through his. It was just like really up and down offensive wise. And I'll come back to your defensive question in a second. It's just like the OPS by month: 596 April, 680 May, 724 June, 841 July. And you're thinking, oh, wow, like he's really going places. Like he's improving by like 100 points every month. And then he really bottomed out in August, 642, and then recovered in September, 700. So it's just like a very up and down offensive performance. I think he's a third baseman. I think he's clearly a third baseman. I think that's where the skill set makes the most sense. He even had some comments from Cedar Rapids that he's feeling increasingly comfortable at third. I think the tools make sense there too. And the corner outfield piece also makes sense because he has legs. Like he's a really good runner, but he has an absolute rocket of an arm. And so third base makes sense because that's just such a big frame to be a shortstop. And, you made kind of all the points there. I think like my only disagreement to you would be the thought of giving him time at third base, because to me, we're just so far away from needing to make that decision.
First
so
base.
Why? Yeah. What did I say?
It's the third base.
The rust continues. Thank you. Yeah, I don't see the value of giving him reps at first base yet. If we're saying let's start him again at Cedar Rapids and let him get hot for 2 months, April, May, then move him up to Wichita. To me, the place to do that would be toward the end of your time in Wichita / beginning of your time in St. Paul. And the reason for that also, I think the argument you can make is he's played so many dang defensive positions in his 2 years as a pro. He's played shortstop. He's played center field. He's played third base. He needs to get kind of hunkered in somewhere a little bit more with a little bit more consistency. And so for me, I would go for your kind of original thought and say third base and corner outfield.
Yeah, third base and right field would make the most sense to me.
Okay,
let's talk about the other guy though over there at Cedar Rapids.
Okay, the other guy over there at Cedar Rapids surely makes a ton of sense. And you brought it up, Jeremy. Billy Amick, Twins second round pick, 60th overall in 2024. The guy who we said, yeah, we'd be happy with that as 60th, not necessarily at 21st, where they took Kalen Culpepper, who was just named Minnesota Twins minor league hitter of the year. Billy Amick just lost the season to injury, essentially. 54 games at Cedar Rapids, 2 extended stints on the injured list this year. He ended up hitting, this is such a weird slash line. I'm so curious for a take on like what to make of this. 310, 418, 455, a 152 WRC plus, a high A. That's so promising, right? 4 home runs in 50 games. He's on a 12 home run pace over a 162 game season. He walked 12% of the time. That's really healthy. He struck out just under 26% of the time. That's a little bit too much. An ISO of 145. Where are the home runs? I mean, a ton of doubles, to be fair, 15 doubles in 54 games, but I don't understand. And maybe it was injury related. What happened here where this is a like kind of home run power driven bat. And it just didn't really materialize for him in 2025.
Well, yeah, he left his aluminum bat in Tennessee, and that's what happened. It doesn't make sense. Like Parr was his calling card. He was gonna be the swing for the fences pick, and if it worked out, man, look at this guy. He's gonna be the answer at potentially third base, and it didn't click. What was his injury? Was it a hand, wrist?
I think it was a broken bone of some kind. I bet Theo can tell us.
So to me,
yeah, it was a broken hand, I believe.
Yeah, and that's Satcher Power. and sometimes for a while, but also I guess he did hit 3 home runs in 18 games in Fort Myers in 2024. It doesn't make sense. And I would guess with him, it's, if it's swing path stuff or adjustments that they're trying to make with him to bring some of that back. You ended up playing 59 games. We were hoping you'd play in probably 60 more than that. So let's get you down there. Curious to see, because he split his time at between third and first. And I would like to see him get more of an opportunity to stay at third.
That's not happening, bro.
And that's fine. I mean, if he hits a ton of home runs, sure, play first. But to me, it's one of those things where, like you said, he almost lost the entire season.
Yeah.
They want to play him in probably close to 120 games. He played in just shy of 60. Let's go play another 25 games in Arizona, and we'll see you in the spring. So I do like the inclusion of him on the roster.
I do 100%. I mean, this is like a classic, like making up for lost time AFL send. Can I ask you one last question about Amick? And I fear this may sound kind of like trying to get you to make a hot take, which is really not. Are you like out on Amick? So like
down but not out.
Okay, that's fair. And I think I agree.
And I would put and part of it is like with prospects, it's the shine, right? And so you bring in a guy like Jimenez, you bring in a guy like Tait, you bring in these dudes. You look at all the steals that DeBarge had. You have Kalen Culpepper, who was the minor league player of the year, who struggled a little bit. Walker Jenkins came back healthy and was fun. The next guy we'll talk about, has a path. Gabby Gonzalez was really good. Like all of these things with all of these hitters, and then it's like, and then Billy Amick, when healthy, couldn't hit for power. Yep. So I'm not going to say I'm out. Down, I don't have him in my top. I didn't have him in my top 20. He would probably be in that 25-ish range. And the reality is, he's either going to climb back up, or he's going to fall off the face of the planet as a Twins prospect, right? There's really no staying as the 25th best prospect that's going to work for Billy Amick.
Let's put it this way, perhaps, and I like your down, not out kind of turn of phrase there. 2026 has to be a good year for him. It's almost like Kalai Rosario, who kind of like put himself back on the map, or Gabby Gonzalez is a great example, actually. Yep. His 2024 season was horrible, and I was the first in line to say, nope, not super interested. If Amick has a huge 2026, he can kind of re-cement his stock.
The thing that the big difference between the guys you mentioned there, though, is Billy Amick played in the SEC. Billy Amick was really good on a really good team in a really good league. Like this is not, he was a high school kid, let's be patient. Like dude was in the SEC. SEC and high A ball shouldn't be different, right?
I agree. And then my wondering is, like, why did he fall to 60th overall? Because he had a bunch of teammates who were taken in the top 30, top 35. And so, You know what? I can also see a world in which he goes out in the AFL and hits 5 home runs. Let's talk about the last most significant Twins inclusion. And as I think maybe Theo added this, Saints hitting coach Danny Marcuso is also coaching in the AFL. So that's
I can chime in on this a little bit. I talked to him at the end of the year, as I did pretty much everyone on that roster except Noah Davis and Brooks Kriske, because I could not even be a spin doctor for good stories on them. But yeah, Marcuso was a first-year coach out of the collegiate world in pro ball, and it was definitely a learning experience for him. He resides in Scottsdale in the offseason. So last year he got to meet with Tyler Smarslock, former bench coach for the St. Paul Saints, now first base coach for the Miami Marlins, kind of, get a feel of what things were like down there. And now he's going to go down there and do some coaching himself. And, as Toby Gardenhire put it when I asked him about it, it's a great way for these coaches to learn things from other coaches and other organizations on how they approach their own player development with certain things. So it's going to be a good experience for Marcuso. I think it's safe to say he's going to be in the organization again next year. So, hopefully he learns some stuff there, and it's just a jumping off pad for, bigger advancement for his career too, as it is as much for these players.
Beautiful. Thanks, Theo.
Mm-hmm.
Always bringing the goods. Good luck, Danny Marcuso. Hope your AFL experience is a good one. Last guy we're going to talk about, Jeremy. Really interesting. Such a weird prospect, and I'm so interested to get your take. Hendry Mendez, acquired as part of the Harrison Bader trade from the Philadelphia Phillies, 21 years old. This is another guy who I want to, left-handed hitting outfielder, and now getting work at first base, allegedly.
Just like we said should happen.
Just like he's another candidate for me of like, why are you there, sir? I'm really interested. And I have a theory, and I want to hear what yours is. Quick recap on the numbers for his 2025 season. So he spent all of 2025 at AA between the Phillies and the Twins. I'll give you the combined numbers: 118 games, 299, 399, 439. That's just a wild on base percentage. A 139 WRC plus, 13.6% walk rate. That was 19% with the Twins, by the way, in 33 games. Just a 13.2% strikeout. 11 home runs. That's a big jump. I believe the scouting report on him coming in to the Twins organization was like major ground ball problem. That continued to be an issue. He had a 58% ground ball rate in AA with the Twins. But very interesting that he's getting reps at first base. I think the scouting on the defense in the corner outfield maybe wasn't so hot. So what's your take on Hendry Mendez? Why is he in the AFL? And what do you make of his 2025 season? Kind of promising.
Yeah, I think he had a great year. Like I've said a ton of times, when I look at a stat line and see a guy that walks more than he strikes out, that to me is great. So he was 67 walks, 65 strikeouts. Like you mentioned, didn't hit for a ton of power. I would guess this is a lot of, hey, we're going to add you to the 40 man. We want you to compete. We want you to report to spring training as someone who could potentially compete for reps at first base. And I don't think that's going to be a next year thing, but I do think he's going to be the first baseman in St. Paul. Yep. And he's going to be on the 40 man. And, with the ground ball thing, I mean, again, that can be something that we'd also like you to work on this. When you send a foreign born player to the AFL and not have him go back to Puerto Rico or the Dominican for winter ball, like there's a commitment here being made between the two, which is significant. And I do think that the Twins are really going to see this one through. So this is an exciting ad because he did everything he needed to do to be in a position where the Twins are like, hey, great job, we'll see you in Fort Myers. And instead they're asking for more out of him. So I do really look forward to this, just to see how he does and to see how often he plays first base, because I gotta think that this is the introduction to that for him.
The handicapping who is going to be the Twins first baseman from like the second half of 2026 on feels so interesting to me. I feel like there's so many potential answers. Mendez, Kyler Fedko, random outside right-handed hitting free agent signing for $1 million. Like it's going to be
Mitch Garver, baby. Let's make Garver.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so that'll do it for AFL kind of preview. We'll keep folks posted on performances. And Jeremy, one last note I wanted to finish on before we call it a night here. Here's my Twins minor league nugget of the day. the Minnesota Twins were the only organization this year in Major League Baseball with 3 different prospects who had 2020 seasons. What do you think of that? Kyler Fedko, 28 home runs, 38 stolen bases. Kalai Rosario, 25 home runs, 32 stolen bases. And Kalen Culpepper, 20 home runs and 25 stolen bases, despite picking up a knock at the end of the year there.
So AAA, AAA, and 2 guys at AA. That's impressive, especially considering the big league team was allergic for the most part and trying to steal bases.
Not anymore.
We'll give the guys away deadline, but don't you dare steal a base. How about Byron Buxton not stealing third until this year? Like what
That's
the
crazy.
That
was a great story. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Connor Prelip, minor league pitcher of the year.
Connor Prelip, minor league pitcher of the year. You know what? We will lead off next week with just some quick reflections on Connor Prelip and Kalen Culpepper and their minor league pitcher and hitter of the year awards respectively. And we'll start digging into offseason things, plans, draft stuff, AFL stuff, all of that. So thank you guys for sticking with us over a slightly longer than anticipated break. We hope to be back with you again this time next week. As always, thank you guys so much for supporting the show. We will catch you next time.